For the final module, I will go through the 4 skills as they're used in a drawing. So we have a lovely drawing here, a lovely image of a path in Melbourne parks, and it gives us perspective, it gives us tone with light and darks, and the other 2 that we need to look at are our line skills and our form and negative space. So let's get started. Right, well, if I was approaching this drawing, this is where I would start. I would just do a very light line drawing to start with and to get the basic details in. So we start down here and we have a look at the angle that this bit here goes on. And so we put that in. Yes, it's around about basically that angle. You just draw that up. Remember, you can always rub it out and change it as you go. Now, how far does that go up? So we measure how far that goes up, and we've got it about right. Then you've got that little recess where the steps are. I think that's a step or some sort of little recess in the path. And how wide is that? It's only that wide. So we cut that off a bit. And then the path goes down and around and basically disappears. Now remember what we said during the lessons about making something appear to go uphill. So to make things appear to go uphill, the vanishing point needs to be above your eye level line. So the vanishing point of this path is somewhere up here, and our eye level line is around about here, the eye level line of the person who's taken the photograph. Okay, so we'll keep going. How wide is that there? It's about that wide. Okay, we need to come a little bit narrower. Up around that tree. And then it sort of disappears from there. So we'll just leave it like that for the moment. Now we've got a couple of trees coming in. One here. Now remember, it doesn't have to be exactly like the image. Unless you want it to be, of course, and then you can make sure that all those details are in. But if you just like the look of the image, and you're just trying to get a little bit of drawing practice in, then don't slave too much over the details. Okay, I've got another tree up here. I think it's a bit further in. Always have your rubber handy. Okay, so what we're doing here is finding the shared edges, where the edges meet of our positive form and our negative space around it. So when we look at this negative shape in here, this one is a little bit narrow, So we'll take it out a little bit there, just to show you how to use that negative space. And remember, as things recede into the distance, they may appear to be bigger than what they actually are. So remember to check that. I'll get some branches in up the top here. Line that one up with that one to see if you've got the right positioning. We've got lots of branches underneath, all little bunches of leaves, so it's a bit hard to get too many more details in. Just get this background detail here of the lake or waterway that's in the background. Comes in like that. And I think there's another tree in underneath there, underneath all those leaves. Just put the basic thing in like that. Now we have to go back to this pathway and get the little retaining wall that's there in. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth one there. There's another one there. course, they get quite a bit longer as they come closer to you. And the ones up here are pretty much in the dark. They're a little hard to see. And one there. But we're going to put a fair bit of pencil down there, so really we've only got to pick up those highlights on the top and the reflected light here. Okay, so we've got our basic line drawing down, and there's lots of little branches and everything that we'll put in later, but that's our basic line drawing. I'm going to put this pole in here. Okay, make it a bit longer. Okay. Now we've picked up our shared edges and done our line drawing where all the shared edges meet. Going along here, down along there. And while we've done that, we have been looking at the form, the positive form of the tree, the negative shapes in between to make sure that we're actually getting the shapes right, getting them correct. There's another little stand of trees at the back there that you can hardly see again. And another level, like a horizon line in the background there. I'll just put that in. And a branch that comes up and goes into those ones like that. Okay. Now we get to use tone and get some depth into our drawing. We start to draw in the shadows and the light. So we have used shared edges to do the line drawing. We have double checked our drawing by looking at the positive form and the negative spaces in between. And also the perspective of the path going up and around, and the fact that we want it to run uphill, so it's got to go, the vanishing point has to be above the eye level line, and that the trees in the background are smaller than the trees in the foreground, even though they're probably roughly around the same size. So we've looked at all of those things in drawing up our image, and now we get to the fun bit, which is putting the light and the shadow in. So if we look at our picture, we can see highlights, we can see cast shadow along there, we can see some reflected light on the retaining wall, a little bit of reflected light along the back of the tree. The crest shadow is in the middle of the highlight on the tree and the little bit of reflected light at the back, and it rounds out the form of the tree. So let's get started. I'm going to use my sandpaper board here and get some graphite to rub some of the dark in, especially down here where it's really dark. And start building the tone. Okay, so I could keep working on this piece for quite a while with all the little details of the leaves and the sticks on the ground and the leaves in the trees. But for an example, that will do for now. You're quite welcome to continue on and get as much detail in as you like. Now there's just a few things to remember. Remember, we are looking at the shared edges when we are drawing up our piece before we start filling in the tone. Looking at all those shared edges, and we are looking at the positive form as we draw those shared edges and the negative space in between to make sure that we have the proper shapes. Then we are looking at the perspective of the path receding in, the size of one tree against the other. I've made this tree a little bit bigger than what it is, and that's what happens because you know that tree is big. So you tend to draw it bigger than what it actually is in perspective going into the drawing, into the image. Then all of your tone gets filled in at the last. So you've got your highlights, your cast shadows, your deepest shadows down around here, some reflected light on your retaining wall, a little reflected light on the trees, and the crest shadow that sits in between that highlight and that reflected light to round out your form. That's what makes your form appear more rounded and three-dimensional.